Tess and the King of the Wildcats, the seventh Tess adventure. Tess and Jack snuggled closer and closer together on the cargo net that was stretched between the two glorious golden eagles as they soared higher and faster towards the Scottish Highlands. Jack the boat dog felt his best friend shiver in the freezing November air and covered her shaggy black and white fur tightly in the blanket that Owl had given them. The two dogs were used to adventure, without a doubt, but as they looked at each other on that freezing cold flight to Scotland, they both knew that their comfort zone was well and truly 500 feet below them. It was almost a year since Tess, Jack and Tom the circus cat had rescued the tired circus lion Samson, with, I must add, the meticulous planning of Owl, who had orchestrated the whole adventure. Tess had met Owl when she was a very young puppy. She had been shouted at by the father of her human boy Billy for chewing his slippers. It was the end of the world for the young Tess, who decided there and then she must leave home, as we all do when we are young. Arriving at the pond near Owl's tree, the very young Tess had looked down at the clear water and was very puzzled not to see a waggy tail in her reflection. After explaining things to Owl, she was told to retrace her steps. As she got nearer to home, Billy, who was now home from school, was calling her. She raced towards him and realised she had picked up her wag, just as Owl had said. Since that first meeting, Tess and Owl had shared the deepest of friendship. It was a friendship sealed with trust, as they shared a compassion for their fellow creatures that soon proved to be the motive behind them rescuing many of their animal friends. One morning, as Tess was left alone in her home by her humans, she lay listless in her bed without really thinking about anything. The morning became afternoon and still she lay in her bed. 3 days passed without change, and Tess hadn't really eaten properly in all of this time. The situation had more or less gone unnoticed by Tess's human owners, who had been looking after Tess on autopilot for many years now. This normally suited Tess, and in the past her freedom to come and go without being missed was integral to many of her adventures. Now, however, Tess was ill, and it was time that they noticed her and got some help. On the fourth morning of her self-imposed bed-bound interlude, Tess was visited by a friend who poked her pretty pointed nose through the dog flap into the kitchen door and sniffed the air. "Hello, Tess, it's Fox. Are you okay? I have missed you. I thought I'd come and say hello. I was walking through the garden and I saw the shed where I hid after you saved me from the fox and tips years ago now, but it still sent a shiver up my back." Tess looked up at Fox. What a day that was. "I was shaking as you led me into safety, Tess, the safety of that old shed. The hunt must have been terrifying as they passed my scent on to you at the edge of the garden and Billy's dad. He gave them a proper shouting at for sure, didn't he?" "Hello, Fox," replied Tess. "Yes, he did. I was terrified." She looked at her foxy friend with genuine affection. "I'm not sure what's wrong with me, Fox. I've just felt like staying in bed all the time. I've been feeling sad for no reason, and oh, it's so nice to see you." Fox tilted her head and smiled. "You know, it's okay to feel sad every now and then, Tess. I don't know any animal that doesn't. Even Owl has her sad days. Then she's very, very grumpy." Tess laughed. "There, you're laughing already." "Tess, make sure you eat some food and drink some water. It's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to make yourself poorly. Will you try to eat something for me?" Tess stood up and stepped delicately out of her bed towards the pretty brave fox face that was poking through her dog flap. She pushed her nose against her friend. "Love you, Fox," she said. Fox replied gently, "Love you too, Tess. Come and visit when you feel better. Owl, by the way, has something to talk to you about, and I get the feeling it's very important." "I will, Fox. I will. Tell Owl I'll visit her in the morning." I'm intrigued now, and if I'm honest, an adventure of any kind will probably do me good. As Fox said goodbye and set off for home, Tess walked over to her food bowl and enjoyed a fine breakfast. She felt so much better, but decided on one more day in bed. A little voice inside her hinted she might just need the rest, just in case. Tess slept until around 3 o'clock in the morning, when she was awoken by the loveliest lick from her closest friend in the whole wide world. "Jack, what are you doing here?" she gasped. "How on earth did you get here?" "Not on earth, Tess. And well, I could tell you," teased Jack the boat dog, "but you wouldn't believe me. You better just come and take a look." Tess stretched and shook herself awake, completely confused by now, and followed her best friend out into the garden. What she saw as she lifted her head was the most amazing sight that she had ever seen in all of her life. She wasn't frightened, even though she should have been. Most animals, no matter where they hailed from or what they were or who they were, would have been terrified, because there, in the garden, stood two majestical, beautiful, fully grown golden eagles. Owl's familiar voice broke the silence. "Tess, I was going to speak to you tomorrow." With a serious look in her eye, Owl sat perched on the top of the shed roof as she elaborated. "Things have moved too fast now. Jack will explain, but it's important that you both set off for Scotland as soon as possible. Please trust me, Tess," said Owl. Tess was still taking in the spectacle of the enormous eagles as she listened to Owl. She had also noticed a piece of thick netting with a blanket on, stretched between the two glorious birds. "Are you joking?" Tess said as loud as she dared. You are joking." "Tess, it's fine," said Jack, calmly trying to reassure her. "They flew me here from the boat, it's okay." "And since when did you become an expert in flying suspended in a net stretched between two golden eagles, Jack?" said Tess. Jack turned to face his friend and put his nose next to hers for a nuzzle. "Well, since about 2 hours ago, Tess," he said. Tess looked at Jack and then at Owl. You are serious, aren't you?" "I really have to do this, don't I? Do I?" As she moved forward, ever so slowly, towards the glorious birds, they lowered their heads and cooed at the animal hero that Tess had become. "Tess, meet Gordon and Gloria," said Owl. "They are husband and wife golden eagles, and they know well all about you. They will protect you and fly you safely, Tess, because they love you just as we do." The two glorious eagles bowed their heads a little lower as Tess approached. Tess was now in touching distance of Gloria. She felt the great bird's powerful beak gently touching her nose with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Jack was already in position by now. "Come on, Tess, this is the best bit. Come and settle in." Tess walked towards the cargo net and climbed on next to Jack. "Get on the blanket, Tess," he said. "It gets very cold at 500 feet. "You really are an expert," Tess replied. She turned towards Owl. "Do I get any information, Owl?" "Trust me, Tess," said Owl. "Everything will unfold, and I will meet you in Scotland tomorrow to explain the whole thing. Love you, Tess." Tess only just heard the "love you" from Owl because, without warning, the eagles had lifted off, and with a whoosh of their enormous powerful wings, Tess and Jack were soon hundreds of feet in the early morning air, headed for another adventure together in the Highlands of Scotland. Tess and Jack snuggled together on the blanket as the two eagles sped them swiftly to Scotland. Their flight over the Lochs and mountains coincided with the sunrise and was so breathtakingly beautiful that Tess and Jack shared a moment together that they would never forget. However, soon after that magical moment, the two friends were jolted back to reality as the two eagles slowed down and began to descend. They were both sure that they were nearing their destination, but what then? Suddenly they had landed, so smoothly, though, before they could even think, in fact. Tess and Jack climbed off the cargo net and Gloria lowered her head towards them. It was hard for Tess to understand what was expected of her, what she should do. "Shall we wait here for Owl?" she asked. Gloria gently pushed Tess with her beak in the direction of what looked like a cave, partially concealed by a wooded area. "The cave," said Tess. "Wait in the cave?" The beautiful eagle cooed in affection, and Tess understood that she and Jack were to go and wait in the cave for Owl. Then, in an instant, as if they were only halfway through an important mission, she and Gordon were gone. Tess and Jack stood in silence for a few minutes and gazed at each other without speaking. Tess moved towards her friend, and they reassured each other by nuzzling their noses together, as they always did. "Ready?" said Tess. "Let's find this cave," said Jack. The two friends walked in the direction that Gloria had directed them. The cave was further away, and the woods thicker than had appeared from their landing point, and Tess and Jack understood why the eagles had not been able to land them closer. "There, the cave!" Jack gasped, almost as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Wait here, Tess," he said. "I'll have a look." "No, Jack, we stick together, remember," said Tess, as she moved closer towards him. Tess and Jack reached the mouth of the cave and stopped. "I love you, Jack," said Tess. "I'm glad," replied Jack. "I love you too." They walked tentatively into the darkness of the cave, which was narrow at first, but soon became wider and somehow lighter, much to the relief of both Tess and Jack. "I wish we'd taken the blanket off the cargo net," said Jack. "We'll be chilly in here until the day warms up, if it ever does." "Oh well," said Tess reassuringly, "we'll just have to snuggle up and—" But before she could finish what she was saying, Jack had leapt to her side, snarling and fiercely baring his teeth. Jack was small, but his terrier bravado and ferocity was formidable, especially when he was protecting Tess. "What?" said Tess. "What is it?" It wasn't Jack who replied to Tess, but she recognised the voice and knew immediately that the voice was one of a friend. "This is the last time I creep up on you, Tess, I promise." And sleeking out from the shadows of the cave emerged Tom, the tomcat. Tess and Jack had panicked for a second or two. Tom appeared so large and his green eyes flashed a wildness that they hadn't noticed when they had first met him. "Tom!" cried Jack and Tess in union. "Yes," purred the beautiful cat, and as he reached his two friends he slinked down on the ground in front of them, as cats do, baring just enough of his belly to show his mother's beautiful ocelot markings.